Captain Michael Kwinga is an accomplished airline pilot, having worked in the aviation industry in Kenya for 15 years. Currently, he holds the position of Chief Pilot and Acting Head of Operations at Jumbo Jet Limited. Captain Quinga is also a qualified flight and simulator instructor and a certified examiner. He trained with Stanford University at the Center for Professional Development, and throughout his career, he has also held several positions in flight operations management. He delivered the first aircraft for Jumbo Jet from Toronto, Canada to Kenya in 2017. He is passionate about training and customer service operational excellence. He has expertise in business analytics, revenue management, strategy planning, and leadership development. Who is Captain Michael Kwinga?
Thank you. Michael Kwinga is career pilot. That is first and foremost. I'm a career pilot. I'm also a manager where I work. I'm also a husband. I'm also a father, and I'm also a farmer as well. And I would also like to add, I'm also a beekeeper. So where I usually come from, we have a lot of honey.
Okay, all right, that's good to hear. And what are you currently engaged in terms of your career? And maybe you can talk more about what is really aviation.
Okay, so currently, right now, I'm in a company called Jumbo Jet. If you've not known it, it's a low-cost carrier. We've been in operation since April the 1st, 2014. And what we basically do is we provide destinations within Kenya and within also the region. We had started off flying to Entebbe and then also into Kigali, and the most recent one was even into Bujumbura. In this place, in my engagement is a little bit different because I'm also a pilot, plus also I have what I call a flying desk job, whereby I also sit as well, and I'm designation is head of operations. And we literally sit together as part of a leadership team to come and formulate policies and procedures for our operation and for our airline.
Okay, so exactly what is aviation? To a young person you're talking to right now, we see a lot of aviation colleges, we see a lot of things about aviation. So what exactly does someone in aviation do basically?
Aviation is actually very, very broad. It's just the same way how someone would ask, like, what is medicine, what is in engineering, and it comes to the same things. Everybody, when they think about aviation, they'll think about the aircraft and probably a pilot and a cabin attendant, but there's so much more in that. Obviously there will be the flight crew members, there are in-flight services. Then we go into the people who, what we'll say, do things in the background. We'll call about the aerospace engineers, we'll call about the maintenance personnel, we'll talk about the dispatchers, we'll also talk about the people who also are involved in design of the aircraft. So aviation is very, very broad in terms of when we delve into the actual career. And there are very many places and there are very many avenues that can be used and channeled, and careers that can be built around aviation.
Okay, thank you for that. And maybe could you describe to us, how did you transition from studying abroad, being at Stanford University, to coming into Kenya and trying to get into this particular industry? And how long have you been there?
I actually did my studies in a bit of a different way. I actually started off as a pilot. I actually did my initial flying year in Kenya. Then I went off to the UK. I went to Oxford Aviation Academy in Kidlington. And then I went and finished the remaining classes in America. I came back to Kenya and I got myself a job. Started off as a young pilot. And I built over, I would say about 4 to 5 years of flying. Just the mundane, I became a captain, but then I realized that I needed to broaden myself a little bit. I needed that there's a little bit much more that I could do, and then broaden the horizon, broaden my reach in terms of acquiring more skills.
Okay.
And so that is when I started looking around. That's when I came up across this course, which was being offered by Stanford University under the umbrella of IATA, the International Air Transport Association. This one is a body that governs most of the airlines that form and formulate procedures and policies. So I got into it, and having the background of what I'll call work experience gave me actually a very good competitive edge for me to be able to delve into this particular course. And I liked it. We went through it, and it was a little bit of a back and forth because it took some time, but eventually once I finished this particular course, the doors opened. And it is easy as that. The doors opened, and then now I was able to now easily transition from being what I'll call a normal line pilot to being offer a little bit more skill set in terms of management, being able to now formulate procedures, coming up with policies for certain companies.
Oh, okay. So you'd say even that experience, being able to enrich yourself in education, really propelled you into the direction that where you are at now in terms of just an up step in your career.
Absolutely, it is. It was the eye opener. I would want to say so. Yes.
Okay. All right. Now I wanted to speak to a young person who's interested in becoming a pilot, because many of them don't even use the word aviation. They say, I want to become a pilot. That's what you find a lot of them saying. So what preparation is needed right from high school all the way to maybe university or college? What preparation do they need?
It's a good question, because a lot of what we'll say the young people, not necessarily that they'll probably make decisions because of the lack of guidance, and the guidance comes from people already in the profession. Especially with someone who wants to delve into the world of aviation, even though you want to be a pilot or you want to be an engineer, you always want to focus around how can I be able to, lack of a better word, be like an octopus, have many arms and many branches, and maybe be able to reach out. Whereby if I'm not in the cockpit, can I go into an office? If I'm not doing maintenance on the aircraft, am I able to do auditing? And it always starts off, it's not easy for you to start off all of them at the same time, but you should be always willing to always seek for more knowledge and for more understanding, and also not fear to branch out of what is maybe your mainstream of the thing that you've always wanted to do. Aviation is one of those fields that involves sciences, technology, mathematics. So all these things, especially when you're in high school, ends up being sort of like your focal point for you to say, this is where I want to engage myself in. The other classes that, if that is where your dream is going to be, it is important for you to start moving in that direction now. Technology being very, very big in this, for the fact that if you look at where the aviation industry is now, and when it was 50 years ago, technology has played a very big part in development of the aircraft and the automation that it has had, not only in the cockpit, but even on how we even handle the aircraft in terms of ground movement, air traffic control. So technology is a very good place to be at.
So you'd really encourage our students in schools that maybe could take up things like STEM clubs, being able to do sciences, technological, maths, and things like that. That is really something that can help a person prepare for this?
Yes, definitely. Having that outreach of STEM education is literally what I'll call it, probably the backbone, and it will lay a very good foundation in a career in aviation. Because we might not necessarily say that this is what you want to do. You might go out there, then you find another opportunity comes and exists. And then you realize, maybe let me try this. But having that foundation enables one person to be able to just slowly articulate and just move on to this particular career choice.
Okay, very good. There are always fears by many individuals about aviation, and they say that this is a very dangerous career in terms of maybe some reports and news they hear about issues that happen when someone is flying. So, what is your opinion about that to maybe people who might have fears or want to enter this career, but they're like, wow, I'm afraid of this?
I would like to say there's first thing I'll start with the statement saying flying is still probably the safest mode of transport that we have today, even in light of what we'll call maybe recent unfortunate events that we have seen. But one thing that also comes with this fear of flying is also a risk perception of when this happens. Usually it is a very detailed, it is usually highlighted. So most people will fear it because of a risk perception that comes with it. There are other modes of transport that I'll see as not as safe as flying. It's just that obviously when we do have unfortunate incidences, they also tend to be highlighted a lot. But I still feel, my take is, and statistically, we know flying still remains probably one of the safest modes of transport.
Okay. And what kind of personality is required really to become patient, to be able to navigate the skylines and things like that for anybody who wants to enter this particular field? Is there a certain temperament, character, personality that is required to be able to navigate into this and be a successful aviator?
Yes, they are. Mostly, it's unfortunate we don't usually tend to check the kind of temperaments that people have when they start flying, but eventually these things come and manifest themselves later on in the aviation career. You can't be too introverted, you cannot be too extroverted. In most cases, you always want to find that person who lies in between, where, in handling people, how you talk to people, handling situations. You could be in the air and then you have an emergency, but you still need to be calm because it's in your mind to be able to put certain things and prioritize your tasks. So there are very many characters that we have out there, and we always do this kind of training so that we understand that there are people out there. Not all of us are the same, but we always do training, crew resource training, management training, to sort of bridge the gap for the different personalities of the pilots and the people who are involved in aviation. To just ensure that everybody is sort of in sync.
Thank you so much for that. Now, let's look at the current COVID-19 situation. The president announced the other day that the airspace is about to open. And how prepared are airlines and, this industry prepared for the current crisis? And what do you see as the future of aviation, taken into consideration some of these situations that may happen?
Thank you for that question. Actually, I think that is actually right up my alley. So in terms of preparedness, a lot of work had gone through for companies, and especially where I'm currently engaged at Jambojet. We went out of way to ensure that we have done what we call our protocols in terms of how we would observe. And these ones have been guided by the various bodies from the World Health Organization, from the main ICAO body that governs aviation industry. And we adopted most of their recommendations to now come and build up our protocols that we'll be using in our company. And I also want to believe that other companies as well have adopted the same sort of practices, because in general, we need to make the general public and the safety of our staff and also the safety of the passengers safe. So in doing so, we prepared the protocols and we submitted to our local authority for their acceptance. And this was to showcase what we'll be able to do once, obviously, His Excellency opened up the doors and he said, this is what is happening. We were prepared and said, this is what we have in place. And this is what we're going to do. And with this, we actually have described our customer journey. So much so, you have also seen in the local media as well, the Kenya Airports Authority, the one that manages all the airports within the country as well, also went through, and they also have their own protocols, again guided by the Ministry of Health. They also came up with them. So in terms of preparedness, I think we are where we're supposed to be, and we're also at an international level, because also what will happen thereafter is the international borders will open. And we'll start having so our preparedness is not localized, it is a very at international level and standards.
All right.
To answer your second question, in terms of the fear and where the aviation industry is, well, obviously it has taken quite a bit of a hit, big nosedive. There will always be some sort of recovery. Some will be slower than others. Some will take a much longer time. Then we'll continue moving on towards, where the sustainability will be for the aviation industry. But we're definitely looking at, a good, 6 to 7 months for local travel, maybe more. For international travel, for it to stabilize, we're probably looking at, good 2 to 3 years before international travel resumes to where it was.
All right. And as an aviation professional who has been in this industry for the past over 15 years, what would you say is the biggest weakness amongst young people trying to succeed in this industry? And what do they need to make the successes that you have had, like to reach where you are?
I think I would look at it in terms of probably guidance, and again, no fault of their own. It might not necessarily be a weakness that is inherent in this particular individual. I'll start off by saying, obviously, there's maybe not enough guidance that is given to the young people. There are organizations that obviously are able to give guidance, but it might be still localized. But furthermore, it needs to be out there that this is what is done, so that when somebody gets into the particular field, they are sort of fully aware of making this particular career choice. Going back again to what the other individual will be, is being able to identify your career path and your goals and what you want to do and what you want to set early in life. And again, that comes from mentoring, and comes from being able to be in the space and time exposed to understand what it is, so that you're able to make the able choices. All right. And what training is available for students in Kenya? Where do students go to study, and which ones are the colleges and the places you can study both here and abroad, for anyone trying to look at what is good? As I'd mentioned earlier on in the beginning of this session, I had mentioned I actually started off flying in Kenya. So there are a few flying schools in Kenya that are capable of training pilots, capable of training students who are interested in the aviation career, and more so even up to even a university level, whereby you're able to do a bit of flying and also get a university degree. There may not be that many, but they are there. So those opportunities do exist. And obviously, when we broaden our search and we end up going to probably either to the North Americas, or we go down to Southern Africa, or even Australia. So the outreach is far and wide, and many of them offer different opportunities, whereby you can have a pilot license, and then you can also have something what we call a dispatcher. You can also do aerospace engineering, and you can also have a license for a pilot. So opportunities exist throughout in most parts of the world. So I would look at it and say, right now we're quite technologically advanced, so people are able to just go out and search, and you'll find, but the opportunities are there. And in terms of also some level of scholarships, you might be able to also get those. Probably not so much so from your degree for your flying program, but maybe for your degree program, because unfortunately the cost of pilot training is probably one of the higher costs that you'll have. But all these opportunities exist, especially if you're able to just look at them. Sometimes it's the right place, right time.
And do you know some of those? Maybe you can tell some young people where to look into in case they need some bit of funding, where to look for, colleges to go to.
Okay, so I think most of the big ones, and even going back even to where we are over here, I remember Kenya Airways, the main carrier for Kenya, also had a lot of ab initio programs where they'll take you straight out of high school, and they'll be able to fund your pilot training, and then thereafter you also get a job with them.
Okay.
So the opportunities exist in different ways. Maybe it could be actually the actual carrier that might actually do the sponsoring, or sometimes it might be an institution, or sometimes it might also come in the form of a grant that maybe we'll select and say, we're going to give this particular marginalized area this amount of funding. So, to be honest, I would love to give an example, but there are so many.
There's so many.
But for international students, it might not be as much as we think, but the opportunities do exist.
Okay, so I think the best thing for any young person is to be proactive, to keep checking if this is what you want to do. Just go on the internet, look around, look at profiles of people who are in aviation like yours, and be able to see where did they go to school and find out what aviation program is there and are there scholarships for it and things like that. So I think the whole idea is to really be proactive.
I think so, and I think from there, if you build up on some searches and you build up on knowledge, and then obviously you'll be able to get to know more, and then sometimes it'll say you throw your hat into the ring and see what comes out of it.
Thank you for that. So what else can a person who is trained in aviation, apart from becoming a pilot, do? I know you had talked about a few things, but would you like to add anything else?
So and as I say, I gave the example of in-flight. This is a cabin crew. There's also the maintenance. There's also the guys who actually design the actual aircraft. This is aerospace engineering. And this is just such a small bit of what we'll call the aviation industry, because the other branches that usually happen. So some of them might not necessarily stem out and say, well, I want to be an auditor in aviation. Those are the actual things that come out later on, which you'll have acquired through your experience. So having been exposed, so you might start off as a pilot, or you might start off as an engineer, or even a cabin crew. But later on in your career, you've done a few courses in safety and in quality and in management, and you find yourself off branching. So it would be nice for people to think around it in that particular perspective, whereby one particular course should be able to branch out to others. As you have said, you'd find, some of the guys we have started their careers as maybe an line maintenance, and someone else started their career. So there are different ways that you can always branch out and to have something what we'll call a fruitful career.
Okay. And what would you say is your mantra that makes you stand out? Because you're so far in your career, and I'm sure you started at that basic point, and now you're this far in your career. What would you tell the youth about what's your mantra? What is it that you stand by that has made you come this far? That maybe for them, in the next few years, when you retire, they'll be in the same position. So what advice would you give, even people already in that particular career, how they get here?
Without using the one-liners, definitely it's a lot of perseverance. But my mantra around, basically what has kept me going over the time is you need to love what you do. And that is going to definitely attract. And then your thoughts around it is definitely going to attract what is going to be your next step. But as long as you love what you do, the rest will take care of itself. There's more than one path to the stars. And, if it's something you want to achieve, even though you find an obstacle, as long as you love it, you will be another way, you will find something and you will move on.
So loving it and being passionate about it, dedicating yourself.
Love it, passion, yes.
Yes, because even listening to your story, you started off being a pilot, and then you kept growing yourself and making yourself better in that particular field. So well done for that. And as we close, what advice would you give young people interested in aviation, and maybe those who are currently training right now. I've seen you're a chief examiner. So I'm sure you've got a few tips about how do you get to succeed in this. Yes.
Definitely around the ones who interested. We'll start off with that category. Obviously, it's for them to broaden what their skills what is actually required, because in most cases, if you have a conversation with most pilots, or most people had no idea what they're getting into.
Yes.
Up until you get into an aircraft, and then you realize, oh, I mean, this is what it is. And other people would also follow along the way and say, wow, that was difficult, or that is tough. And then they realize maybe this one is not for me, because the picture that is set out there is, you're flying to New York, but then maybe you find your first job and you're in a very, very different place, in the rain and in the mud. So it's also important to understand as well what you're getting into, and that one is to just broaden and ask the questions, and just persevere. For the ones who are actually in it, I'll say, if this is what you've dreamed of and this is what you've decided to do, you need to just persevere with it. And shoot for the stars, land on the moon. Get up there just saying, this is where I want to be. You'll get somewhere. And aviation is one of those careers that requires to be proficient, requires to have the knowledge, because we are called upon to make decisions at the snap of a finger, and the decision in most cases needs to be the best decision. That means you've generated 3 other options, but in between all those, you've said this is the one that you'll do. So you need to always be astute around it, think around safety, think around being practical, and think around an end goal.
My last question now: do you have organizations that people who are in aviation need to belong to be able to cushion them, to be able to elevate them in their career? And also, how is this particular career in terms of payment, in terms of financial packs that come with this particular career? Because to be honest, we see pilots around and they're doing very well. So is it about the career? Is it lucrative? Is it something rewarding?
Definitely so, but to answer your first question, so there are definitely organizations. There may not be as many as in Kenya, for the fact that our aviation industry is continuing to grow, but there are definitely bodies. The good thing around these bodies recognize international members. So there are definitely organizations that you can always go to, and these ones also help you as well to develop yourself. So those ones definitely exist for flight crew. In terms of it being a rewarding career, yes, it is, but it depends on which reward you will want to talk about. For me, I think the reward I will say is, it is nice to see that this person came in, they came in as a student, we sat down with them, and over a year they're able to fly a plane. And the comfort is I can put my family in that person's hand. That to me is my reward.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right.
So that is rewarding.
All right. Very good to hear. So I'm so grateful, Captain Michael Kwinga, for talking to us. It was really insightful in terms of knowing more about the aviation career and how young people need to prepare themselves for this career. So thank you so much for talking to my career mentor.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for hosting me, and asante sana.
Okay, thank you so much.